Dig a little deeper, see a little clearer, learn from the people who've been there before. Real stories, real experience, real insight. This is Ace Quiz Wiz Masterclass.
Are you serious? That is Jim. Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
What?
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're based out of. This is AI Masterclass episode 1, and I have, of course, nobody other than Dr. Valeri in the house. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. That was the first time I heard the intro.
That was the first time I heard the intro in its full sense because I just burned it and I put it as an intro video. I was telling Val.
Did you AI that? Because that beat is hot. Like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of AI. The vocals are definitely AI. I can't sing that well. But then I play around with a bunch of AI tools. And I thought, why not use AI for this as well?
I want that recipe. Like, who did you use to cook that bad boy up? I feel like I need to put an intro to all my courses at that jam.
Oh, if you've not attended, I would recommend watching the intro to the show that Rob and I do. It's called Asking for Trouble. So I started doing that. Then I made one intro for Rob. And then I just got hooked to it. It's a free service. Anybody in the Atlassian creator world. I think I'm going to make one for you, Val.
Make one for me. I will walk in. Like, I always joke that John Funk should have a theme song as he enters every room because John Funk, that name is just fire. So make me one. I will randomly walk into rooms and have my beat in the background. People will think I'm crazy and insane. And I'd be like, yes, I am.
You need background music in life, right? And this is that. All right. If you're just joining and you're not one of the 38 people who were on when we played the intro music, we just cooked up an intro music for AI Masterclass. If you're joining us for the first time from community-led classes or any of our co-hosted champions or communities, welcome. This is a series that we'll be doing for 4 weeks. We'll be joined by experts. I'm going to share my screen in a minute. And we're going to start talking about artificial intelligence in any way, shape, or form. I'm very excited about this series because we'll try to do it in a different manner. I've never done a recording or any live session where I have used content slides, but this time we had to use some content slides in Mentimeter. I'm going to share my screen and you can scan that QR code and join me on that presentation so that all of you can follow along as well. But yeah, that's the idea. And anything else before, we want to get started? Well?
Yeah, I just want to shout out our champions that I can see on the screen. I'm logging into chat right now, but we do have a chat master. It's Prashant. Oh, I'm going to say can you say his name right?
Prashant.
Yes, thank you.
You should have an Indian friend to pronounce your Indian friends' names.
Please do. Yes, please. Thank you so much. I'm going to get side tutoring about how do I pronounce this, please? We also have Theodora. We have Patricia. Thank you, all the champions who have joined. We love you. Back to you, Siji.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, that's the idea. So I'm going to I've already shared my screen. So this is how you can join us. You can scan this QR code or you can go to menti.com and enter this code. When you do that, you'll join this Mentimeter presentation that you're seeing and you'll be able to follow along. So there might be some questions that you can answer. There are a couple of things that me and Val have in our agenda today. So we can discuss through that as well. Even if I change this slide, you can just go to menti.com and enter that QR code and you'll be able to join us in the presentation. Please keep the chat as your very loud voice. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have concerns, if you have examples I think that would be a learning experience for all of us, no matter where you are in your AI journey. The idea for this series is to not just get you started, but hopefully take you to a place where you can start implementing some of it. Uh, it's a very common saying, well, but AI won't take your job, but people who know AI might take your job.
True, no true words have been spoken. I saw in the chat the other day of uh, someone saying that they don't want to give information about a technology because they don't want to be replaced. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, but someone who knows that technology has no problem replacing you. Like that we got to let go of that fear of like not
Yeah.
sharing because we'll outdate ourselves. Like we'll talk our way out of a job, and it's just you got to roll with it. So the brave souls that have joined us today, I appreciate you all coming. We were just talking before we started about how if you step away from AI for a while and focus on other tasks, because we have greater jobs, and then you come back in, sometimes it's like starting over from scratch. You have to get back up to speed. So coming into a master class that brings you from the beginning to where we are now, it refreshes all of that information and it challenges some of the assumptions that we've been holding on for a while. And while AI has evolved, so it wasn't AI today isn't what it was 6 months ago, isn't what it was a year ago, 3 years ago. It's just going so fast.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I don't have literally don't have anything else to add to that. So let's just get started. Uh, let's get started with where our audience is currently. So what when you hear the term AI, what's the first word that comes to your mind? So you can just use either the chat here or the Mentimeter presentation that you have. Okay, agent, automation, Skynet, of course. I think that was my first introduction to AI as well.
I've been watching a lot of pandemic apocalypse movies, and I'm like, so if there's an AI apocalypse, are we all going to eat each other? So, gee, don't eat me. I'm like, please, I will. There are so many other things to eat. We can all become
Yeah,
herbivores, like
yeah.
options.
I don't mind that. I mean, being herbivore. I mean, like in Matrix, like if you remember, right? They plug humans to like power machines, and then they are fed through pipes. Like, it's
Yes.
okay. You don't have to
Don't
fight,
use me
right?
as an energy source either, please.
Okay. Um, I really like that somebody wrote teammate. I think that person has really evolved in their journey. I'm very happy that you're here in this conversation as well, along with somebody who thinks AI is Jarvis, which again, perfect example from pop culture. It is kind of like Jarvis, but anything that shouts loudly to you, well,
I like so I saw there was Skynet on there, but theft. So intellectual property, very, very much a growing concern as AI goes out there. What can we protect as humans? Like, so anything that you can copyright or patent has to be human created. It can't be AI created. So if you develop something through an AI agent, it creates an interesting conversation of like, who owns that code? Like, is it the LLM that helped me generate it? Or is it me? What is it? So that's an interesting conversation that I look forward to getting into in future classes.
nice. Okay, that's perfect. All the terms that you have shared here. That's great. Let's move on and let's get the series started with the buzzword decoder. There are a lot of terms, even in the previous slide, there are some terms which are acronyms or not something that everybody might be, accustomed to using. So, Val, how about we decode each word and talk a little bit about what those are before we get into the deeper sense of it?
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. All right. So, of course, AI. AI is machines that can perform tasks that normally would require human intelligence. I think the best example is Netflix recommending me what to watch next. Any other example that you can think of?
AI. I mean, it's everywhere. Back in the day, no one realized that they were using AI in Google search for the longest time. The
Yeah.
LLMs have been in Google search for at least a decade. Um, anytime you saw the smart search results, that was an LLM narrowing down and suggested search results. That
Yeah.
was Google. Google was leading, trailblazing that bad boy. So the
Sure.
thing about AI is it's kind of an umbrella term that everything kind of falls under this AI concept. It's very general to say a thing that reminds us of human intelligence. If it's not human intelligence, then it's an artificial intelligence. There used to be lots of conversations and arguments of like, is it really intelligent? For the sake of your job, for the sake of your work, you don't really need to have a big debate over whether or not it's real intelligence or not. The idea of a masterclass isn't to know everything there is and to memorize everything there is about AI, but to really tune out the noise and focus in on the information that is going to make you better or improve how you work. So every example that Sajid goes through, I want you to think back of like, how does this apply to me and my everyday work? What does it mean to me? As Sajid and I discuss how we evaluate which model to use in our everyday work, consider how you would use. What criteria do you use to evaluate certain things? How might you use these words? And where does the confusion come in? So like each community, so Sajid was telling me earlier how he switched orgs from a smaller organization to a much greater organization. And between those two organizations, they use terms differently. And that's very common. We use terms differently here in the US than Sajid does in India, than someone does in a coworker in Germany. And we all work globally. So how are these terms being used by different groups? And then where's the confusion coming in? And sometimes it's not over just the word AI, but what meaning are you attributing to the word AI? Are you talking about LLMs? Are you talking about the model itself? Are you talking about Rovo, which is an AI interface, which is just what you interact with? Or is it something else? And being able to just identify where that confusion is coming actually goes a long way in being able to work effectively.
That makes sense. Perfect. So yeah, that is AI, right? Like again, for somebody who just would want to understand the term that Val said, that even before it blew up, we were all using AI. Today, you're using AI. If you're using Spotify, one song, if you hear on it and it recommends you the next, it's AI. Everywhere around you, any recommendation, any tool gives you, it's coming from an AI. All right, let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about machine learning. What do you think machine learning could be understood as well?
So machine learning can be any process that is by a computer, a program, an app, and then processing that knowledge to generate information. So it's the process of going from data, so raw material, into some sort of information, and we talk about ingesting as in eating. Eating that information to then produce something. And when we say produce things in the AI world, we're talking about generation. So like when we talk generative AI, we're talking about a machine that has taken information, processed it in a bunch of ways, and then generated something new. So it's ingested and then generated something new. The terms we use are kind of funny. I never realized how odd these terms really are. And just because I say data, it doesn't mean it's raw data. Sometimes, like when you talk about LLMs, they're taking both raw data and structured data. So data that has been organized in a way, and then there's multiple layer of processing. So one might be sorting into boxes. Another processing might be taking those boxes and sorting them into circles. And and each time the data is processed in a new way, it's learning something. Every time you prompt a LLM, it's learning something. Now, there's various different levels of learning, which we'll talk about later, but that's the learning. It's you're adding to the statistics or the probability of the responses based on how many times you use certain words and certain tools. And that's why we can't think of AI as deterministic, because if I'm prompting AI one way like 1,000 times and Sajid's doing it in a different way, his responses based on the statistics through the learning are going to be different than mine because I have narrowed the focus of that data differently.
Perfect. Uh, what do you think? Uh, what do you think is the difference between machine learning and deep learning? So these are also terms which are thrown out. You mentioned types of learning, right? So what do you think about deep learning, or is it very different? Like we can see an example on the screen, but I would love to hear your take on it.
So deep learning, right? Okay. It's level of complexity. So
Hmm.
machine learning, again, we have very broad. Machine learning can be anywhere from Gmail identifies your spam to Slack identifying the people you talk to the most. And that's
Hmm.
again that statistics based on the inputs that you put in. And two people can have different outputs because of how they're inputting it. Deep learning, we do more behind the scenes than you see on what the user sees in the interface. So, for example, facial recognition on your phone. You're seeing the end result on your phone, which is your iPhone turns on. And you don't see a lot there. You just know that when you look at your phone in the right way, in the right angle, which I don't have facial recognition on my phone, that it opens. But there are complex data points like positions on your face in the programming of facial recognition that uses a mapping system in order to then activate to trigger an action that puts onto your phone. So it's the
Hmm.
level of complexity of pattern recognition. And
Makes
you
sense.
don't necessarily need to know the terms machine learning versus deep learning, but understand for your daily work, this is one of the reasons why Rovo specifically doesn't do image processing well as right now, maybe not in the future, then it does summaries. Because summaries is a lower complexity. It's more machine learning off of an LLM, a language model, based on all of the written information and giving you something. Image processing, real image processing, takes some deeper learning where it's using image data points to then create a model to then give you either words or other images or other things. And that's what people don't see, and why sometimes there's frustration of like, well, it can do this. Why can't it do this? Because
Yeah.
behind the scenes, it's a whole different level of learning that the system has to do in order just to turn your phone on. There are
Sure.
so many more data points or things it has to process in order to turn your phone on than it is to summarize all your text messages.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. So we've gone through what is AI a little bit, machine learning, deep learning. Let's dig deeper and differentiate between Gen AI, LLMs, and again, another big term that gets thrown around a lot, which is RAG. So generative AI is AI that can create new content, as simple as it is. You give a text prompt and you get an image. LLMs, a little higher class of it, a word that Val has used a couple of times already. It's like generative AI, but it talks or works with words and conversation. It might be a little rudimentary. Do you want to build on that, Val?
Which one, LLMs or generative AI? Sorry, I was
LLM.
in the chat. King Rob has entered the room. King Rob has a long history. Is he the reigning king? I thought I saw a picture with a
Yes.
crown and a belt.
Yeah, he is.
What did he recently win that he got?
He won the trivia championship this year.
I want to say I'm surprised, but I'm not really surprised. Like the level of not so Rob, Rob interviewed Alaskan CEO. And he went deep. Like I was reading the interview questions and I was like, what? So he was analyzing the past of the choices Mike has made to predict like what he might do in the future. And even Mike himself sat there and was like, that is a very thoughtful question. Anyway, shout out to Rob, the King Rob. The
King
difference
Rob.
is the generative AI, LLMs, and RAG architecture. So generative AI, remember when I was talking about ingesting, and then once you ingest, once you eat that data, then you generate, and it kind of like it makes it seem like throw up, but then you generate. And you can generate all kinds of things. You can generate images, you can generate words, you can generate you can generate data tables, you can generate, we talk a lot about images and words, but you can generate all kinds of things. You can generate code. So that's generative AI, anything that can make something. Language models, that's where my expertise comes in, because my background is in linguistics. My master's is in linguistics. That's why I've been doing this so long and no one really cared, because linguistics tends to be boring. And then suddenly I became popular. And I'm like, guys, you never wanted to hear me talk about this before, but now you want to do it? So a language model is very culturally bound, which people tend to forget. Language is how we communicate with other people, and it changes over time. So for example, slang has suddenly gotten popularity, and then they added a new word to the dictionary. So how do we add new words to the dictionary? Well, it's popularity of use. Language models work the same way. So if someone says bootylicious enough, and yes, bootylicious is in the dictionary, if someone uses bootylicious enough, it gets added to the dictionary. And then anyone who looks up B eventually gets to bootylicious. The language models work the same way. So they take how we communicate via language, whatever language you speak, English, German, Hindi, like any language you take, ingest all of it, and then puts it on a probability scale of, okay, so when I say wake, what's the next probable word that's going to come out of my mouth? And what word do you think will come out of my mouth, Sajid? If I say wake. Bootylicious. So bootylicious might be on the list, but it'll be ranked for like 1% chance that the next word out of Valerie's mouth will be bootylicious. Up might be ranked number 89 on the next probability of me saying up next. And so language models rank all of the words based on how they're arranged. And you can imagine, so in the English language, we have a bazillion words, but in the Chinese language, in Mandarin, they have a gazillion and 2 words. They have so many words. And if in Chinese, if you speak Mandarin, it's a tonal language. So you could say the same word 3 times in different tones and have 3 different meanings. So I know I probably lost my camera, but depending, you can still hear me? Okay. So the reason why I went into that complexity is that it relates to RAG architecture. So the more words you have in your language, the longer it takes to calculate the probability of what that next word is going to be. And without RAG architecture, anytime you prompt AI, it's going to take 10,000 years and take some computational speed. That was the problem that they were trying to solve when they created RAG architecture. RAG architecture is retrieval augmented generation. And you couldn't see my face, but it was really close to the screen so I could read that. What that does is it tries to economize or set up the processing of that data in the best way to get the answer the fastest. Now, Saji, I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't know if I should leave and then come back in so my video is fixed.
Maybe you can stop the video and start again.
And start again? Okay. To go into RAG architecture a bit more.
Sure. All right. So I think that example that I've put there might be a good response or example of what you can leverage RAG with. So like, for example, as Val mentioned, when you have a data repository which is contextualized to what you're trying to do, building that or using that when you're responding or when your LLM is responding to your query, that is called RAG. Like, for example, Confluence or SharePoint, if you already have a repository which is talking about a specific feature that you're trying to ask about, Your model will not go out in the internet searching for information. It will, but it will look at context that you already have in your local system, read it, and then present an information or a response to you after reading that. So, is it fair to say that retrieval augmented generation is kind of like a common practice now? Well, and not something that is exclusive to any model?
So I would say in language models, it's the go-to standard for processing language,
Hmm.
because there is multiple pathways that you could use, like multiple ways you can do the architecture within RAG. There's really no one standard way to do RAG, but the concepts are still the same. So
Hmm.
if I was an AI agent and I was designed under RAG, I go and I look into your knowledge repositories, like your Confluence page. I bookmark, like it's a library, I bookmark all the books that I think are related. Then I at this, it could be at the same time or it could be later in the loop. Then I go into my language model and say, oh, okay, they asked me about these things. And so I'm going to go and pick out these words in my model. Okay, I bookmark those. Then it processes it and then it spits it out. Instead of what the alternative to RAG architecture is I spend 10 years looking in your Confluence. Then I come back. Then I go into your LLM. I tend to spend 10 years over here trying to process it and come back. And then I go back and give you piecemeal information. And
Hmm.
the processing speed was terribly long, and it was burning up laptops because it was burning through your random access memory. So it is about all economizing information. But RAG architecture isn't the only architecture out there. But think
Hmm.
about it for your work. I want when anyone says RAG, the application to your workday is that anytime you have retrieval, anytime you try to get information from an LLM, it's taking processing time. And so when you're working through various different models, depending on the complexity of your request, the longer it's going to take in order for it to process that information. So if you go and you create this really long workflow for Rovo, and it has like 10 different automations in it. One, it's going to break. Sorry to tell you, it's going to break because the complexity will kill you. And two, it's going to take forever to spit out that information. And then if you have all of your employees doing the same workflow over and over again, you ever have like the slowing of death on Jira where you're like,
Sure.
you hit the button and 10 years later it clicks? That's what's going to
Yep.
happen. And so on an individual business level, you got to that's what's killing your speed, but also not to be all globally minded, but without systems like RAG architecture where we think of AI differently and how we're consuming processing speed, think about more power plants. In order to do a lot of processing, it takes a lot of physical power from your desktop. And then in order to power that desktop, we need some kind of power plant. And without us thinking about how we structure and process data differently, we're going to have more power plants, people. So think about this. When you feel like you're caught up to speed with it, definitely do some poking around on the interwebs to see what you could do about your individual consumption, what your business can do for consumption, because it does cost money no matter what you do. And then you think about it on a global sense about how we can cut down on that use of electronics.
Nice.
That's
Okay,
wrap.
building on that, what are agents? So, agents, literally, as the name suggests, they can take actions, not just answer your questions. So, as you can use GPT to answer questions, agents can perform actions. In that model, in that way forward, when we talk about MCP, I'm going to not talk about MCP and ask Val to explain, because I think what I wrote is very rude and like very rough, but like I'm sure Val, you can explain what MCP is.
You want me to do that now? Okay, so before every time I do a class, um, to answer questions, sorry, I was typing something. Um, every time before I have a class, I go into our forum, our Rovo forum, and I answer all the questions I can find. And I do this quarterly, but I also do make a point to do it before class because that gives me a sense of really what's on top of people's mind. Right now, the majority of the questions I get is MCP, NCP, model context protocol. So in your everyday work, unless you're, I want to say a developer, although other people could use MCP if you're vibe coding, you're not necessarily going to use a model context protocol. That is just how you call, like literally call various different things in AI has to happen in a specific order. RAG architecture is all about calling. I'm going to call your knowledge base. I'm going to call the LLM. I'm going to process it, and I'm going to give it back to the user. Model context protocol also uses a system of calls. And if you don't have, it's calling and connection. I'm going to use the guys, I'm thinking of these examples on the fly, just so you know. So if they're wonky, you're welcome. So if I'm going to call Sajid and he's in India, if I don't put, what is India's country code?
+91.
If I don't put +91 and I put +92, I'm going to get a whole different country.
Pakistan.
Is that true? Oh my God. Shout out to Sajid for the random knowledge. And if I call him and he's blocked me, not only am I going to get offended, but that call's not going to go through. MCP is a way of calling various different programs. So if I'm Atlassian and we got one for, SAP. SAAP. I know we're supposed to say it and not say SAP. SAP and Atlassian both have MCP servers. But I was trying to search the internet last night. I'm like, but are they connected? Does Atlassian's MCP know the country code for SAPs? Because if they don't know the country code, no matter what you do, you're not gonna be able to connect it. And if SAP, Sajid's SAP, by the way, I'm Atlassian. If SAP has blocked Atlassian or doesn't even allow calls from Atlassian, it's never gonna go through, even though both the systems have NCP. So this becomes very important later on if you start trying to build connectors in your developers, because you have to know what protocols to use, what directories are there, and whether or not Sajid will accept my calls. And Sajid, I bet if I'm calling India, you need to accept my call.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. I'm sure that.
Okay, that's a great example. One thing that I would also ask you to, shed a little more light on is this term called prompt engineering. Like a couple of months ago, almost a year ago also, I think this was like a very hot thing that people were talking about, right? Like my YouTube was filled with ads. Yes, I don't have YouTube Premium. Was filled with ads of prompt engineering classes. I was like, no, I don't need it. I just need to understand it better. So my hack for that was I would ask the model that I was talking to how to ask the question. That used to be my hack. I didn't need prompt engineering. I had an AI which taught me how to ask the question. And that always used to work for me. But like for everybody's knowledge, what is prompt engineering and is it important to give a better prompt or go through it?
Well, one, I really like your example or your workaround or your cheat because it works for so many things. So if you don't know what prompt engineering is and you feel like you're not getting good responses, ask your AI, hey, write me a better prompt for this. Or if you're getting long into your chat and you seem like your quality of answers aren't going back, saying, hey, the quality of answers I'm getting isn't back. Give me a prompt that you suggest. Review our chat, give me a prompt that you would suggest, and then look at the example and tweak that example, edit it, and then give it back as a prompt. So prompting is just a way of asking. But in AI world, you got to ask your questions in a certain way. And there was a great debate over, do you have to start with your purpose or do you have to start with your character, like character as in like cartoon character first? And before, when the technology was newer, like baby AI was very fussy on the order in which you phrased your prompts. You had to start with the cartoon character, pretend that you are an AI expert, and then you had to go on what you wanted. I need your help with writing prompts, and then you have to go with your tone. I need a professional tone, and it was very like structured, boom, 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 boom. These days, you can ask your questions in various orders, unless you're an AI engineer, and then you're designing things in the back end. In the back end, you still have to be very specific on your order. Front end users, you can now rearrange the order of how you structure your asking and still get meaningful responses. But the thing that people get confused in is prompt, like prompting your AI, which is very, very basic. You're just asking a question. Hey, can you summarize these tickets? And then agent instructions. Agent instructions are very similar. They used to follow very similar structures, like give me your cartoon character, then give me what you want your help with, then give me the tone, then give me an example. All of that string goes into your instructions, but your instructions are your job descriptions. I need you to do this job, and these are all the tools that I'm going to give you in order to do that job. And they're longer. Some some agent instructions could be like 2,000 characters long. Some of my prompts, do not ever read my prompt history. It's just as bad as my Google history. One of them is like, WTF, like, what the hell is this? And then sure enough, you press send, it will give you an answer back. And most of it is apology. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to give you that information. It was wrong. And then it'll give you the right. So you can have a certain level of complexity in your prompts these days, whereas your AI instructions still do need to be longer.
Sure. Prashant says it's not about clever wording, but it's about controlling context, which that's a great point, Prashant.
On that point, also, it's controlling context in the number one thing people forget in their prompts is explaining what you don't want. I don't want you to use commonly used phrases in AI. I don't want you to give me non-factual information. I always start my things with, I need you to be factual and up to date, especially if I'm talking about AI. Claude, we'll talk about this later in the presentation, but using various different models to check other models. I use Claude and ChatGPT to check Rovo all the time, and vice versa. I'll use it, like Patricia uses it to create her Rovo prompts, but I'll create the prompt. I'll create agent instructions in Rovo based on another agent. So like a copy an agent and copy all of its instructions. And then I'll go to ChatGPT and like, here is basic agent instructions as my example. This is what I wanted to do. And then I'll go into, okay, what skills should I have? What things do I need to connect to it? Is there anything else that I'm missing? And so it's really acting as a tutor. And if you do that enough times, you'll start seeing the patterns of, oh, it's going to always ask me this. And it's always going to make me connect to this.
Makes sense.
I like these tips in the feed. I am reading them.
I agree. It's supposed to say model. I don't know why it says what is a mode, but what is a model? That's a sentence we've thrown around a lot, Val. What is a model?
A model is any way to conceptualize information. So to think. So I in PhD land, I like to say frameworks and models a lot, and I use them interchangeably. There is a difference, a technical difference between a framework and a model. Just like RAG architecture is a framework, like framework, there's nothing in it, and then there's a model. But LLMs are large language models, and there are various different types of LLM models. And that's why you're getting some of the differences between the models is sometimes they rank priority differently. So I could create a language model and I would like to override some of the standard statistics. So even though Saji is a grown adult and can say F you several times, I am a proper human, and I would like to always say F, what the fudge. And so I'm going to go into my model, and every time Sajid says what the F, I'm going to rank it lower and replace it to what the fudge. And so there is underlying programming within the various different models that make them behave a different way. And that difference in behavior is what we contextualize or what we think of as that model. So for example, in your everyday work, in my everyday work, AWS, I'll use Bedrock and AWS model because they're subject specific. So if I want to talk about chemistry, I'll go in all of their models, blah, 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 and I'll find the one that is trained on so many chemistry language, because chemistry is very specific in the vocabulary that they use, and I want them to use it in the right context as other chemists might use it. But if I just want general language and I want to actually sound like a human that is not smarter than I actually am, I'll just use ChatGPT, because I use ChatGPT projects and I put all the information of all the research I've done in the past. So it actually sounds like me and not like an AWS Bedrock science model. But sometimes when I want to sound like a science head, I want that model. Especially if I'm going to review something about chemistry, I'm going to want that specific model. And so there is a skill that needs to be developed of transitioning to versus model, and then knowing the differences of those models. And I caution people, if you get to a model and no one will tell you what the difference is, what makes their model special because it's proprietary, don't use that model, because it strips you with the ability to understand what that model is good for. And basically you're spending credits for no reason. And eventually they're all going to cost. So think about that.
Gaurav is asking, is AI scanning the chat? Yes, Gaurav, Skynet is here. Skynet fix that text. But I agree. That's a great representation. I'm so glad you said how ChatGPT you use in that context, and how it has that reference of how you talk. So this is a question that comes up a lot, right? Why ChatGPT feels so smart? Because it has read a lot of text, and what you said earlier, it works by predicting the next word. So people who are on Menti, let's complete this line. What Val already asked me, and I missed it up a little bit. So yeah, right, star, right? So twinkle, twinkle, little. You didn't have to think; you knew what the next word. There could be a lot of other things, and I'm sure there are smarter people on Menti who would write other things than star as well. And that's exactly how GPT would work. It would rank the other words, but put star on top.
Yeah, and one of the other things to think about is there's this concept of temperature, and you don't even remember this word. It's not that important unless you're me in the world of AI constantly. But you know how you prompt something and you get variability in your responses? You prompt something, it sounds different than what I prompt something. That part of that is I have created, like I've prompted certain things, like I've asked it in a certain way, and then I fed my projects in the various different ChatGPT, Claude. I filled my projects with my data. And so it's pulling off that information and sounding like me. But if I wanted to cut down on the variability, I want it to give me the same response every single time. You can increase or decrease the temperature of that of those responses. So I get consistent responses every time. And it's not deterministic. It is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like changes the range of, it will only, like if you rank something from 1 to 100, it will only pull from the most popular words. Yeah. But say I wanted it to be super creative. I was like, I want to write a poem. I want you to be creative. I want you to pull deep. Then I would change that temperature to have more variety. Instead of going only from like 80 to 90, I want you to go from 50 to 100. Sometimes I want you to use commonly words, but I want to write a haiku that sometimes is less commonly used words to make people really think and feel my emotion. So that is also something you can change, but you have to explicitly say that in your prompt. It'd be like, I want you to use only the top used words in this thing. But sometimes when people sound like a robot, and they like those AI words and jargons, it's because it's only pulling from the top 90% of commonly used
Yeah.
words.
Right. And everybody who wrote that, that's exactly what GPT does, right? Like you predicted what that next word would be. GPT does kind of like the similar thing. It just does it much better because it has read so much content more than all of us combined. All right. We've already talked a little about LLM, so I'm going to move on to this specific section because we only have 15 minutes, and this is the most fun part. So, I was just telling Val before this we actually started that uh, I've personally not done this. I've pitted, what Patricia said, I've asked one model to help me with the prompt for the other very commonly, but this is something I've not done. So, right now, I have one browser where I have three of the tools that I use. I have GPT, I have Gemini, and I have Cloud. And I'm going to go in incognito mode for all three of them. And we are going to ask it a question and we're going to see how all three of them respond. So I ask, I'm a professional with 15 years of experience in PM, Agile, Atlassian. AI is changing the industry. What skills should I invest in over the next 3 years? By the way, definitely something that I recommend all of you to try. It's a very uh, future required prompt. So yeah, let's use this prompt on all the three AIs. First of all, I really like the fact that Google suddenly changes and says, calls me stranger. And because I'm just in incognito, I had not noticed that it changes. Claude and GPT looks a little bit similar. Uh, Full disclosure, on GPT, I'm on the Go plan. On Gemini, I'm on the One plan. So not free for both. But on Claude, I am on free plan. So we'll see how that might also change the response that we are getting. All right, let's ask this question to all three models and
Is it
see
possible
what.
to zoom in your screen a little, like increase it to there? Ooh, look at you, fancy.
All right, let's start from ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, it told me a little nice things about me. It says with 15 years of experience, your biggest risk is not AI replacing you. It's that AI will compress the value of many activities that consultants and PM traditionally charge for. I didn't charge people for reporting and documentation, but thank you, GPT. Let's look at the skills that it's asking me to work on. It's asking me to invest in AI workflow design and automation. It tells me learn these AI assisted project deliveries, orchestrations. Uh, it tells me to work a little bit on product operating models. As a project management, is asking me to understand product management, portfolio, OKRs. It's also asking me to understand governance and enterprise adoption. Again, a smart thing. I think data literacy is again really not data science, but like just understanding a little bit more around technology. So like it's asking me to understand SQL, it's asking me to understand analytics. How would a metric work is something that GPT is asking me to understand. And it's asking me to learn more about APIs, integrations, LLM, RAG, basically whatever we just said. And finally, sixth point, it's asking me to upgrade my communication. So who I am talking to rather than just middle management work, but how I communicate to top leadership or executive communication. Smart, good point. Let's look at what Gemini says. Gemini gives me almost the same summary when I began. Interesting.
Mhm.
But then it says its first point is generative PM and AI tool architecture. It doesn't like a little different than what GPT was saying. It's asking me to not just use AI, but architect how your organization uses it. So Atlassian is heavily embedding AI, your use these skills. It's asking me to, he's Gemini is throwing fancy words like value stream management and flow metrics, which people put on their resumes to get interview calls. Uh, it's asking me to understand cognitive empathy. Hmm. Not a word that I read in GPT. Very interesting. It's asking me to stop spending time on manual reporting, complex Jira JQL, Rob, not JQL, basic Scrum facilitation, manual ticket grooming. Okay, very nice of it to tell me to sunset some skills. As an admin, I don't think I'll ever stop writing JQLs. I think I'll probably always
Also,
mod.
Rovo can't do JQL very well. Rovo's search within Jira itself can do it, but like if you did it in chat, it's always good, especially that's like a foundationary skill for anyone, especially if you're going to want to be a coder, like someone who writes code. You got to know that's a foundation. So, like, I don't necessarily agree with that, and you don't always have to agree. So,
Yeah.
one important thing when evaluating your various different models, I look at is like you do still need to be in it. You still need to look at this and be like, I agree with this. I don't agree with that. This I didn't even think about before. Maybe I need to spend some time reflecting on it. Back to you, Saji.
Yeah. Uh, One thing that I really like in this Gemini response is how it specifically is asking me, not just telling me what skills. It told me 3 skills that I need to work on, told me what not to work on, and then is giving me an action plan to talking about certification, which is really interesting, which GPT did not do. And then not as big as some of the other things, but it's asking me to learn some of the data pipelines, Snowflake, BigQuery. Okay, let's look at what Claude says. Okay, Claude says doesn't give the standard Gemini response or ChatGPT response of the first paragraph. It's breaking it down into AI fluency. Of course, it's picking keywords. Now Claude is using word like teamwork graph, which didn't exist in any of the previous examples. It's asking me to look at AI governance. All right, I think GPT had it as well. It's nice that it's giving me references right here, which I don't think GPT did, nor did Gemini. Yep. But it's giving me references where it's pulling that suggestion from. I really like that. It's giving me portfolio level thinking, change management, cross functional. I like that it brought in that don't do this as well. Manual Jira configuration as a core service. Okay. Ceremony focused Scrum coaching, basic reporting, watch carefully, hedge your bets on. Well, nobody is hedging their bets on data center anymore. And yeah, reframing your positioning. Okay, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go back and while me and Val talk, which response do you think was the best? And I'm gonna unpin this, but 100% Jimmy. Most organizations won't need Jira administrators is something that definitely all the GPT models would say, but I don't believe that. The role might change, but
Yeah,
admin.
definitely the role might change. So when we look at comparing models, like when AI goes down, and I think Claude went down yesterday, it really shifts my daily work because I work in AI every day. So like I really have to then go for so the concept of like there will only ever be one model and we only have to think about it just needs to be thrown away in every workplace. Your computer right now is running multiple. You go to Google, if you use Chrome, that has one model behind just search. If you use Microsoft, that's Copilot is in there and it's embedded across all the features. If you go to Atlassian, Rovo is embedded in the entire ecosystem. So we really have to develop the skill of determining and evaluating not only sources, but the models themselves. And you don't have to go super deep, but you just have to bring the concept of valuation to the forefront. So, and there is no right or wrong answer here, but I'll lead you through my thought process. So, in the morning, so my dog wanted to say hi. So in the morning when I wake up, First, I default to OpenAI ChatGPT because I have created project folders for my most frequent projects, and I've uploaded all my work information of like all my research papers, so it sounds most authentically me. And it has the most like medium range responses, right? But if I wanted to go to something special, like I have a client who's in the medical sciences, I'm going to transition into AWS and pull out one of their LLMs. But maybe, like Patricia said, I want it to pull out the information, the answers I want, but then I'm going to go back to Claude maybe and check it and say, hey, change the tone of this. I just don't like how it sounds. And sometimes I work in documentation and training. I just don't like the tone of some of the models. And I'll be like, don't say that, say this. This is not how I would say that. So you got to determine what your evaluation criteria is. One of the core things that will always exist in it's not a good AI tool, is if it's not transparent. If I can't tell you where you pull that information from based on the little bubbles, like Sajid's image had little bubbles of like sources. In Rovo, it's at the end of like, we pull the information from here. Sometimes ChatGPT, it's at the end, or it'll tell you as it's processing, if you use thinking, it'll tell you, I did this step, I did that step. That's very important because sometimes I don't agree with the steps that it takes. And I'm like, whoa, stop there. Do that differently. Don't look at that source. That is political jargon. Never reference that when working in my workplace again. So you have to really have more oversight. I caution people of just taking answers from an LLM and just assuming they're right, because as we know, not always the case. I know we have 3 minutes left. Sajid, this has been so fast. I think you're on mute, but I still love you.
This was so much more fun and it took so much more time, but like 100% agree. Okay, this is one key word that I definitely want to talk about. What is hallucination? Wow.
So hallucinations are a wide range of types of things that can be hallucinations. One, AI generally is a people pleaser. So sometimes in the quest to please you, it'll just make up information. That's why I'm like, give me factual, up-to-date information always. And I put that in my instructions. But it could also be, sometimes it creeps off of your intent. So like if I want to focus on Jira, and it creeps over to JSM, that could be considered a hallucination because I said nothing about JSM. I was working only in Jira. So that could be scope creep, your focus of what you're prompting on, scope creep, it can be considered a type of hallucination. One big hallucination that will kill anybody with a higher level degree or any credibility in the industry is fake statistics and fake references. That's why that source button is very important, and clicking on it and going through those sources, because if it's pulling from, it's not necessarily making up the statistic itself, but it's pulling from a source that made up that statistic, then you're still on the hook for that data. And then fake legal cases. There was actually a legal case and people got fired because lawyers were using they were using AI to write their briefs. And then the judge realized that it was fake legal precedent and they were arguing a case over it. And so many heads have rolled on that one.
Yeah.
So hallucinations are important to look out for, but how do people identify hallucinations? Sometimes it's really hard to catch them because it sounds so convincing. That's why I think expertise will never go away, but how we create and become experts will. We will become experts by critically evaluating our data sources. It takes a lot less prior knowledge. Like, you don't have to memorize an encyclopedia. Even some generations don't even know what an encyclopedia is these days to become knowledgeable anymore. Because we have that level of data processing is done by our generative AI. But being able to, I've been in this field for like 10, 15 years, and I know that doesn't quite sound right. Being able to identify that that's being a hallucination is an important skill to have. And so sometimes it's just like, it may sound right, but you need to take an extra step to check if that reference statistic is right. And sometimes it'll give me a statistic and I'll be like, can you just go back? You said this in your comment. Check back to make sure it's factual and up to date. And even if you do it once in the chat, you may have to do it multiple times. Oh, constantly remind the friends to be accurate. Ooh, and we are at 10:30. I'm sorry, I talk too much, people.
Yeah. No, we definitely are going beyond time, but I'm gonna skip some slides because we wanted to talk more a little bit in depth about, of course, agents. But we're gonna skip that. We talked about agents a little bit, but how we can do that is something maybe we can cover in the next episode. But this is what I want to talk a little bit more about. That's Val's book, by the way. It's available on Amazon if you're interested. Check that out. But this is your AI starter kit as per me. You don't need too many tools. You don't need too many prompt templates. You don't need to have an expert AI on everything that you need help with. You need your willingness to experiment. So for me, I'll give you my journey. I started using ChatGPT. From there, I moved on to, of course, models for image generation, a bunch of other things. But then, like for example, I play around with music a lot, so I started exploring what GPT models or which generation models do music really well. uh, Again, not copywriting and putting it on Spotify. I don't think that's fair, but for my own muse and fun, I play around with a lot of music models. Then in terms of video generation, I use Hagen. Then there are other models in there as well. So I think what you need to get started is to get familiar with one model, create an account, and give it more context, because that's the key word. The more the model knows how you talk, what you want, and how you speak, it's going to give you more references. Like way back when GPT came out with creating folders or creating projects, I started using that and I started seeing the difference in the response GPT was giving me as well. And I thought, till then I had issues with context, so I would ask something and not get the response that I want. But then I created folders, like my work profile was different than my personal profile, and the context that I was giving it in those profiles, the answers were definitely very specific to the folders that information stayed in. So yeah, with that, I think we are going to end, because again, we don't want to go over time. Thank you everybody for joining in. I do want to say that, let me share my screen once again. We have our next session on 1st of July, and I'm gonna yeah, like and subscribe if you like this channel. There are a bunch of other things that we do. There's NNEL that is missing from that text as well. But on 1st of July, Kiera is going to join me for the next episode, which is Prompting is Dead, Thinking is Not. The link would be on the community-led classes and on the quiz whiz. Please do join. And if you have to drop, please feel free to drop. But Val, key takeaways, anything else other than what I've just written on this screen that you might want to talk about?
Yes, I think my video is frozen again. I tried to fix it, it didn't fix. But I love your tips on starting small. Start with one LLM. Don't let it intimidate you. Technology can be super intimidating, and don't fall into the trap of like you got to know everything. People, it's impossible to know everything. I could step away from AI for a week and come back and it's all changed over. So, and then you have to catch up to speed. Don't let this be a pressure. Like, give yourself permission to take it slow, to do what you can, to incorporate it over time. Definitely like and subscribe to these resources. If anything, it helps Sajid produce more of these. I'll come back on more as a special guest so that we can take you through this journey together. And remember, you're not in it alone. There are other people, other champions, other creators out there that are more than happy to take you through it, to share what they know. And then once you learn, share your information with others, because AI is going to be a skill that we all need to develop. It's going to be like technology skills. It's very important for our modern workday. And that is the worst freeze frame of my face ever. Oh my God, Sajid, can I get a greater broadband so that never happens again? You're like, I'll make you small so you never have to see it. I love you. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to close out in the interest of time. We will definitely have Val come back for episode 4. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us today, Val.
Thank you. Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Dig a little deeper.